King of Podcasts proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Brought to you by KingofAmazon.com. Go to KingofAmazon.com when you do your shopping for Amazon to help the King of Podcasts. Shop for Amazon at KingofAmazon.com.
The horror show at Extreme Rules. We had two matches that definitely put the part of a horror show they were trying to put into this pay-per-view tonight in place. The eye for an eye match and the swamp fight. All right. Then a couple title changes. You know, for me, the overall scope of what WWE is right now, it's interesting what I'm reading on Twitter right now as we start the program, as I record it tonight. And it's not wrong, but I must say, Brian Alvarez actually put a pretty good point here and wasn't too wrong with what was going on. Because what he put up says a lot. We've gone from Thunder, meaning WCW, Thunder, to 2000 WCW Monday Nitro. What a journey. What it comes down to is, I'm looking at all that happened with this pay-per-view tonight, and there's just a number of things that I feel really odd about. So yes, looking at a swamp fight, eyes out of sockets, and there were just some real shitty booking in some of the matches tonight. And the other thing too is that there's just a whole lot here where, you know, I'm looking at some stars that have been around for a long ass time, even if they might have been away for a while, coming back. It's as if the experiment with Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff, they're trying to scrub away and they're doubling down on what was not working back in May of last year, after WrestleMania last year. Remember? Because that's where we are right now. Now, one of the phrases I normally talk about on this program, which if any of you have listened to this program for any significant amount of time, I have used the phrase off season. WWE off season. And this has not been an off season. This is much different. But what has happened now is we are in a point in time where bad booking habits are crawling back into the mix. And some of those are happening right now because I feel like WWE only wants to work with a very thin, narrow roster that they're going to focus on it all. They have a lot of stars they can bring out, but they only want to put so much focus on a scant amount of stars, as if they have nobody else to work with, because there's people that are away because of COVID or injuries or whatever there might be. And it's as if they have to do this because of the COVID situation. They really can't do much more with the stars that they have. They're working with who's willing to go ahead and comply and come on board and work. And there's probably a lot of fear and anxiety and all this kind of stuff going on that makes it tough for certain stars to be brought up. You know, I mean, in this show, you know, there's a number of stars you didn't see tonight, right? We didn't see AJ Styles. We didn't see Bobby Lashley, but he did not compete. We didn't see Matt Riddle. Well, I mean, what we saw was lots of Bayley and Sasha Banks in two matches. And a lot of Alexa Bliss. And, you know, I mean, across the board, I am so mixed about this whole night. Unlike the normal Plan B pay-per-views, the B side, the B quality pay-per-views that we get. We get grade A pay-per-views, and these are the B pay-per-view. But again, there is a formula that they go with it, right? The cinematic match, we get that treat at the end. And then there's another couple of matches that are stip related that are been a little bit different, right? And, you know, they're working on it. Like, they're trying, but it just felt very weird how they've been working things out. Now, going back to the previous pay-per-view they did, Backlash, last month, we had the greatest wrestling match ever. And you see there's a real formula that's being used. So no Randy Orton, no Edge, right? No Jeff Hardy, no Sheamus. No Miz and Morrison. Now, they really do change it up. It is kind of like a Raw heavy, SmackDown heavy pay-per-views. It feels kind of like that a little bit. But they are kind of mixing up who's being on the pay-per-views. It's not the same people over and over. That being said, even without that, there's just certain stars that are here that just feel really off. And what worries me the most are some of the outcomes of the matches. So let's go into it. 7 matches on the card. On the main card, 1 pre-show match. Kevin Owens over Murphy in 9 minutes. Kevin Owens feels like an afterthought. And I don't know, man. I think also him speaking up, being very concerned about COVID, and, very, very family related. I feel like Kevin Owens, his responsibilities are changing. And I feel like with Kevin Owens, he's not so much where he's worried about, championships and, the status that he's had. I think he is content in where he's at right now in his status in the company. But I don't feel like he's going after a brass ring or there's anything about that that's really in point. I think, he came out, he's working, and he's involved, but not in a focused feud. He's just kind of like latched onto the Seth Rollins story with Murphy and the dilapidated, disciples of the Monday Night Messiah, which kind of a throwaway match. New Day, Cesaro, Shinsuke Nakamura, that tag team title match, New Day, think about 8-time champions. It feels so weird when I hear that. And they have nobody else to go ahead and put up in those tag titles against. Again, no Street Profits, no War Raiders. And it tells you that some of the stars that have not made it for the pay-per-views, they're not able to cut it. Because WWE has not been able. They are hamstringing themselves. They're hamstringing themselves from making new stars. And they have resorted to going back to stars they have been able to heat up and cool off, and heat up and cool off. You just look at that. MVP now, he is set up here and, doesn't have to fight Apollo Crews, and they just set the match like they did. Rey Mysterio, who's been around there forever, and, having to fill a spot. It's not a spot they want to give Andrade or Angel Garza. You can just see the full change around of like all these younger stars. Aleister Black, none of these guys are getting a chance. None of them. Murphy being attached to Seth Rollins, you see one. Really, of stars you're trying to build up. Other than that, who is there that's being built up? Nobody. And remember, Murphy was in the pre-show match. All the stars you had on tonight's pay-per-view, they've all been heated up or down or have been around for so long. I don't even know how many years Cesaro's been around, but I feel like he's coming up on a decade if he hasn't been there already. And Nakamura, afterthought. And I'm just saying to myself, man, I wish Shinsuke Nakamura was somewhere else. I wish that guy could go ahead and... I wish they would bless him with like a release of the contract. We're not doing the right thing by you, Shinsuke. Please accept our apologies. Let's send you and your family back to Japan. Go work for New Japan. Make some money. Get your stardom back. We failed you. Okay? We did. Because they have. Cesaro the same way. I feel like they failed him. Over and over, they can't find the way to get him over into a big star. But again, he's a great hand of the ring. You can't do much more. They just haven't done right by him. I still feel like Cesaro shouldn't be where he's stuck in the spot. Anyway, Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura win the tag team titles on the SmackDown side. I mean, it's just hot potato. That's all it is. There's nothing prestigious about those tag team titles. New Day being tag team champions is one thing, but again, that's not necessary. Does it make a difference to see Cesaro and Shinsuke winning the belts? No. But they're put us together as the makeshift tag team because the company failed on both of these stars. That's all there is to it. For whatever reason, Bayley and Sasha Banks, those are the only two women in the company that matter. After Becky Lynch stepped away to become a mom, Charlotte Flair also stepping away in some way, shape, or form. Shayna Baszler was not on this show tonight. You just look at the focus on who they're bringing on. And so Bayley wins over Nikki Cross, 12 minutes. And with that, it just felt like Nikki Cross, they failed her too. Like, what have they done with this girl? I mean, imagine, we saw last night at Slammiversary, Eric Young and Madman Fulton, the two members of Sanity, like Killian Dane's in NXT running around somewhere, and he's just, I mean, he's there. He was working the other night. But again, nothing to where the level he was before. I just feel like altogether, Sanity's in a tough spot. Like, there's just, you had something going at NXT, and the ball was dropped as soon as they get over. And that's what happens with most of these stars in the first place. How many of these people that make their call up from NXT that have a little bit of buzz on them, or they have kind of been built up pretty well? Because I think NXT has been able to get certain stars to a good spot to sprout up and to grow once they get to the main roster. I feel that for Aleister Black. I felt that for Shinsuke Nakamura. How can you miss with him? You know, Apollo Crews, I felt like kind of sort of was in that same spot too. Andrade, they did a really great job with. I thought, you know, they just had a lot of that. Humberto Carrillo, if you were looking for him, he wasn't there tonight. I just feel like that they are at a last resort, the company. They're at a last resort because of COVID, because of the lack of crowds, and they just need to put familiar faces on board. The match with Bayley and Nikki Cross was fine. You know, the way they set it up, okay. But it's a Raw match. We've seen the match over and over on Raw. We've seen these two fight each other in some way, shape, or form. Like, they've been attached to each other at the hip, both of these teams, for a while now. And then they would have said, the one thing they did accomplish was, okay, Bayley and Sasha Banks now are champions, double champions. Hold on to the gold. Multiple championships. Who would normally do that? WCW? Like, that would let Goldberg have two belts. They would have, like, I forget who else that used to have, like, hold the U.S. title and the world title, but multiple belts, because they just ran out of people to hold the belts with, right? No factions. No stars are like super, super over. I mean, I think Sasha Banks is to a point, but that's just because, I mean, she's very talented. There's a buzz about her outside of wrestling, I think. There's a lot of people attached to her, just this real viral feel to her online on social media through Instagram or Twitter or whatnot. And a lot of fan base. I mean, she's got like a real cosplay type base for her, because there's just a look to her that is so unique and different, and she's a very attractive girl. It's just something about her where the gimmick resonates. I think that actually resonates to more young people than anybody else. But then with Bayley being attached to Sasha, I think just those two working together makes sense. But now Bayley and Sasha, after the whole thought of, and by the way, two teams that were makeshift together, right? Bayley and Sasha Banks before, because they got pinned together to go ahead and go after the tag team titles for the first time. And then they had their split. They got back together. Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross originally was going to be I thought we were going to see those two get split up. But that didn't happen. And then I'm trying to think. There was, Bayley and Sasha Banks had their split. They were supposed to be split up, but now they're back together. And there was going to be another split again because they were already at words with each other before, not too long ago. But again, they didn't make any sense. Like, there's no follow through in storylines. This is textbook WCW Nitro. I kid you not. When it's true, it's totally. I'll tell you what. When I think about what Brian Alvarez said tonight, and of course he wrote the book on it. There is something to be said about what we had in the days of WCW 2000. Such a well said point. Very well said. And we're talking about pre-Millionaires Club New Blood. That's what we're talking about. Because what happened in WCW 2000, 1999 into 2000, there was a number of things that Vince Russo put into play that was definitely against the normal grain of what the establishment bookers, the Kevin Sullivans, the Bob Molds of WCW would do back in the day. And so the Kevin Sullivans of the world said, well, we're going to go ahead and work with the guys we know. We're going to just work with guys we've had around forever. And that's what they did. But in those days, they also had some matches that just didn't mean anything. Actually, correction. It was after the start-stop of the New Blood Rising. Remember, we had New Blood and Millionaires Club. It was after that. I stand corrected. It's been a while, man. We're talking about 20-plus years. And honestly, when I actually think about it, I could watch WCW 2000 pay-per-views, and I'd probably be more entertained than I was where it was tonight. It's just because they had matches that were just so odd and weird, right? Because then we're getting to the point of the Bayley-Sasha Banks match. If I'm correct, of course, there was plunder going on in the match. Not the over-plunder like we'd seen in WCW, but there was plunder. And Bayley ended up winning. Then you have MVP against Apollo Crews. So Apollo Crews, for whatever reason, they went with a forfeit. But then MVP goes ahead and claims the belt. Without any reason whatsoever, not much of a story behind it. Again, the lack of information, so WCW 2000. So WCW 96 to 2001, period. Then Seth Rollins, Rey Mysterio, I'm trying to think of a match that would even compare to that, but it would take me too long to go and figure it out. But seeing this match, I hate the Seth Rollins character. I hate it with a passion. You can't do anything. I'm trying to even think, who would be the best example of somebody that you wanted to see get over and you tried to get him over some way, somehow, and you couldn't. But he was pushed to the moon for whatever reason. I don't know, but it's just so bad. I feel like Seth Rollins it's almost comparable, almost like I feel like a Billy Kidman. What can you do with this guy to make him something more important? You put him up against Hulk Hogan, you give him Torrie Wilson as a valet, and you try to build, the natural born thrillers around him, the radicals, or the filthy animals, right? So you got all that. You just, okay, let's build a faction around him. Let's give him valets. Let's give him other things. Let's try to put some things around him to make him cool. But Billy Kidman was never really cool. He was a good wrestler. I feel like Kidman and Seth Rollins are very much one of the same. Never could get him. I mean, I feel like channeling Mike Graham never drew a dime. He's Jeff Jarrett. Yes, Seth Rollins is Jeff Jarrett. I might as well call him Double J because that's what he is. Seth Rollins has the level of Jeff Jarrett type push. It's like a level he just can't get past. He's stuck in a spot And even with Jeff Jarrett, I mean, there wasn't necessarily a faction he put around himself with that really made a difference. But the truth is, when Seth Rollins mattered was as a member of the Shield. That's it. It's pretty much safe and secure to say that now. If he didn't have the authority at his back, same thing. But this right here, Monday Night Messiah, scratch it. It's not working. It's just not working. Yes, he did what he did to Rey Mysterio. Does it give him any more heat? Does it make him any more devious? I don't feel it. I feel nothing for this eye for an eye match. And Rey Mysterio, to his credit, man, he works. You know what? He's worked with some shit stuff in WCW back in the day. You know, this is not him winning over JBL and stuff like that. You know, and winning titles. Like those heydays of how Rey Mysterio was booked back in the day in the cruiserweight division early on in WCW to, you know, his mid 2000s run, which was great. But this here, Rey Mysterio's working it, man, because they know him. They trust him. They gave him another contract. Who else are they going to have that can work this out? And it doesn't work for me. I don't feel any kind of anything. Seth Rollins feels like you changed the channel. I can't tell you how many times I have changed the channel when I've seen him on TV, because he is a killjoy, an absolute killjoy. I feel nothing for Seth Rollins. He offers nothing to the table by himself. And don't get me wrong, he's made the effort. And WWE, to their credit, has tried the kitchen sink and more with getting him over. He will not be Roman Reigns. He will not be this. Remember, this guy beat Brock Lesnar not that long ago and was champion, right? Last year this time. And nothing. It doesn't matter how many times you let him win Money in the Bank, cash in, and win the belt at WrestleMania, or beat Brock Lesnar again. The one guy that can beat Brock Lesnar, you can't, but then besides Drew McIntyre, of course. But again, nothing from this at all. And I hate to say that, but I feel like Brock Lesnar, even if you beat him, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. I mean, now we'll say that Drew McIntyre, I still feel like he is of importance, but they have nobody to give him. You went back to the well with Dolph Ziggler. Yeah, you have that storyline. That should have been a TV match. This should have never been set up. It should have never been set up for a match that they had on pay-per-view. Should have never been an opponent. You want to do a TV match with Drew McIntyre at the end of a Raw? Sure. But pay-per-view? Absolutely not. Dolph Ziggler in the last year, he's been up and down. He got teamed up with Drew McIntyre. He got beaten 30 seconds to Goldberg at, what was it, Crown Jewel or Super Showdown? One of those? It was a Saudi Arabia show. I remember that. What else? I mean, Dolph Ziggler, hey man, credit. He's out there. It's like him and Rey Mysterio. These guys just been around forever. Lifers with this company. And they continue to let's just do something with them. But they're taking up spots of people that now, Bruce Pritchard and the gang, do not want to push. They have no faith in pushing anybody right now on their roster. Only a couple. Matt Riddle is one. Drew McIntyre is up to that level now. But really, who else do they have? And then what happens is that when NXT has some promising things, right? Keith Lee, the cartel, I'm calling him, with Phantasma and Escobar and Joaquin Wilde, right? And then I see Nikki Cross. Oh. And then on the women's side, you see Io Shirai. And there is promise in NXT. But do you really trust the Bruce Pritchards of the world on the main roster? Do you trust them, those promising stars, to those people? Think about it. Because who is there that's the next person to go ahead and be brought up? Because they took some stars and they just dropped the ball. Call up Lacey Evans? Not much. Otis? We haven't seen Otis and Tucker. We haven't seen them. Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville? Nothing, right? And so that's all going along. Otis still has not cashed in the briefcase yet. Or it's even tempted or teased, right? And then you're just, what can I say? I haven't talked about this because I don't want to go ahead and browbeat the company. I don't want to do that. But it's true. This is where they are. Because there's just so many other pieces of the puzzle that could have made this pay-per-view more interesting. The wrestling wasn't bad, but the storylines are horrible. They're consistent. They got much more going on to it, I must admit. But you could see they made a full switch off of whatever Heyman had in the books. Switched it off. Now what? What the fuck is Bruce Pritchard going to pull out of his hat that's going to make any difference that's going to turn around the Raw ratings? Because they're bad. SmackDown, for its effect, for a go-home show for Extreme Rules, 1.8 million. Raw, 1.5. You can't hot shot book a show at this point and turn those ratings up. I mean, you have to think about, you're going to have to pull some strings. And for instance, Brock Lesnar's coming back, so that should spark a little bit. If that doesn't, then the company is better, needs to start refocusing on something here. Like the panic button better hit if Brock Lesnar comes back on Monday and that guy does not pull a rating. And Brock Lesnar will come out with Paul Heyman, start off the show, set things up for SummerSlam, and then what? Like if honestly, if you don't see a blip and say, okay, Brock Lesnar coming back, the ratings get back to like 1.7, 1.8 million. If that doesn't happen, the creative team and WWE and Bruce Pritchard and Vince McMahon and Triple H, they better push that damn panic button at a lot. Because that's scary. That's a horror show in itself. Because if they don't get this turned, I mean, I still contribute to the fact that the erosion of the ratings a little bit is COVID related. I'm still going to say some of that. I think live crowds and seeing some things coming back, that will make a difference. I really believe that. But again, we might have another 6 months like this before we start getting themselves outside. Okay, because the first step that they have to make if they're going to get themselves out of COVID is like they were talking about. They want to move themselves to another arena and then spread out the crowd. Yes. That's the next step they got to make. They're going to have to make a step where they can go ahead and work an arena and not work at the Performance Center with a plexiglass and all those wrestlers standing outside the ring. No, we want people in the seats, actual fans responding honestly to the product. Not this cockamamie clapping seal shit. No. We don't want this choreographed stuff. No, we have to have fans actually speaking like us in the crowd. That's what's going to happen for them to really turn things around. That will actually get the ratings up back to where they were pre-COVID. I think we'll get back to 2 million viewers for SmackDown consistently, and then we'll see Raw start creeping itself back up. And maybe SmackDown will get back to 2.5 million viewers or 2.4 to where it was. If they just get the semblance of feeling like, okay, feel like we're feeling more like a show we've always watched. We'll get there at some point. Once they get there, then we can feel a difference, right? A little bit of difference. Now, but that's got to be something that comes down the line. I don't know what else you do. But they have nothing in the terms right now that's really standing out. I mean, if you look at this roster here, and you look at the roster for last month, holding off Randy Orton and Edge, leaving him for just TV, and then setting something up, coming up in SummerSlam, sure. You want to holding some people back? Okay, got it. Because there's a number of stars that were not here, but they're not making a major change. I mean, from my end of the bargain, Randy Orton needs to be going after a title at this point. I mean, you did a really good job of building him back up with the Edge clip, right? And that's good. So let's get him going, right? And unfortunately, Edge, he's hurt again. The risk you take is very unfortunate. So with Randy Orton, listen, this is where you need to go ahead and say, listen, man, screw it. Make him a champ again. Put him back to the main event. He has to be now. Randy Orton has to be main event, championship level. So do what you got to do. Make him go to Raw. Make him deal with Drew McIntyre. You set that up. I don't know, something. But Randy Orton's got some buzz, and he's always had it. And he's a mainstay. He fits, the Ric Flair thing. Go with it. Brock Lesnar, I don't know what you do with him coming up. But again, SummerSlam, I don't see where they're going with what they could set up for feuds and matches going forward. I have no clue what they could set up right now or what they're even considering at this moment. I don't know. Because at the moment, if you look forward to SummerSlam, you got to ask yourself, what do they have set to do things, right? We don't know yet. But I'll bring that up in a minute. I'm gonna hold that part of the conversation. Let me get back to finishing up the recap of the show. All right. So again, eye for an eye match. I just didn't like it. And it's because, again, Seth Rollins with the win. And now what? Now what was Seth Rollins? I don't know. I'm just not feeling this character. I'm not feeling this gimmick. It sucks. It really sucks. Now, true WCW fashion was when Sasha Banks took on Asuka for the Raw Women's title. That is pure horseshit WCW booking from back in the day. Vince Russo would be proud. Because he would pull this kind of thing off. I really believe that. Match was good. 20-minute match, by the way. It was really good. Listen, Sasha and Asuka work great together. I mean, you're not going wrong with that at all. It's a good match. Those two can work great together, and they really put a good match together. The finish was shit. Yes, plunder. You got the referee taken down, out of the picture. We don't get another referee. Bayley puts the referee shirt on, counts, forces the timekeeper to ring the bell, and they run off with the belt. I mean, that's the way we're going to end it. It's shit. Pay-per-view, horrible idea for booking. This was bad. Bruce Pritchard thought, well, shit, I could do what Vince Russo did. I don't know. I don't know. And I thought Bruce Pritchard hated Vince Russo, right? But Bruce Pritchard must have been the one behind this stupid booking. Who booked this finish? Who thought this was a good idea? Stupid. Anyways, Drew McIntyre over Dolph Ziggler. And this is because of the horrible stipulation. A horrible stipulation. If McIntyre got disqualified or counted out, Ziggler would have won the championship. And there's a reason why they did not announce this on SmackDown. They waited till the damn pay-per-view. Because we had to go ahead and hear the fans bitch and moan and complain about this on Wrestling Twitter all weekend. People would have kind of tuned out. Right? And that's what kind of fell here. And again, bullshit. 15 minutes for the Dolph Ziggler match. That didn't even be this long. Maybe back in 2011, 2012, maybe? Not now. I mean, Dolph Ziggler, you've been booking him as a has-been. It should have been me because of me. It should have been me because of me. Who's writing for him? And so, honestly, did not need about 12 minutes of this match. But I will say one damn thing. The Claymore kick continues to be booked solid. Nobody gets up after that finisher. I must admit, they are doing that right with him. So McIntyre, just like that out of nowhere, hits the Claymore kick, wins, done. McIntyre retains. Which is the right result of the match. Then we got the Wyatt Swamp fight. Now, kind of what I figured it would be. I mean, I knew they were going to go really horror story kind of feel like a kind of a swamp thing, sort of Friday the 13th kind of feel to it. Like, it really felt that. The exteriors where they did it was really cool. Like, they really did find a good Florida swamp. Imagine, this must be, Wyndham Rotunda's backyard where he lives, right? Up in Panhandle of Florida. I think that's where he lives, right? So you got that, and then you got this set up, with the deck, and you got the pond stuff, and like the whole swamp look. Absolutely like a swamp. Like, that's authentic swamp. That's Florida swamp. I can tell you, I know it. And I liked it for the most part. For the most part, I thought the storyline for that was very consistent. That was actually the best storyline for any match of all. And the way Braun Strowman looked, dealing with the other factors, I mean, it was weird that you had these no-name people that were defending Bray Wyatt when he doesn't have Luke Harper or Eric Rowan around, right? Like, that's kind of weird. I did like Wyatt, playing the oddball, Firefly Funhouse host, playing Dr. Frankenstein. I thought that was pretty cool. And it was nice to see Bray Wyatt back. And I think just playing up the old story, I thought that was good too. I liked it for the most part. We didn't get a finish, though. Instead, Strowman, he's out. Now, the one touch I will say, I did like seeing Alexa Bliss come out channeling Sister Abigail. That was actually really cool. And it was nice to show that they actually showed kind of a bit of an interest where Alexa Bliss was actually, when we saw this time that there were, her and Strowman working together on the, what was that challenge thing? The Facebook thing, I forget what they called that. The tag team challenge, right? Whatever it was called. There was a thing about them. They didn't really play on it, but I thought it was pretty damn cool. I thought it was very damn cool. They're going to have to explain that. They should have something about that going forward. I don't know how they're going to do it, but all we know is that, like a horror movie, like a Jason took out one of his victims, and we see movies where Jason's taking out the what was it? Was it the first Friday the 13th where the girl was there in the boat? Or was it the second one? And then the girl was grabbed by the boat, submerged into the water, and then we never saw her again, right? Same thing here. But we don't know what they're going to do. Like, they've left this in suspense. What happens to Braun Strowman now come SmackDown? Where does he go? Where does Bray Wyatt? Like, well, we see where Bray Wyatt is because we saw The Fiend come out. So, the match, the cinematic stuff was pretty good. I didn't mind it much. I didn't mind it. Cool little feature. I have no problem with the cinematic thing here on this one. It wasn't as good as, it's not as good as Boneyard. It wasn't as good as Greatest Wrestling Match Ever. Probably about the level of the Firefly Funhouse match. Kind of sort of around that level. It wasn't bad. I don't think they winged it. I don't think they did a bad job with it. I thought it looked good. I actually think it did kind of help Braun Strowman out a little bit, to my own thought. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Because there's a lot of thoughts I could go and continue on about SmackDown. Or something about SummerSlam coming up next month. So we got 4 weeks to SummerSlam. What are they going to do to put that together? That's supposedly a big pay-per-view. I don't know what they do. So they got a lot of work off of. I mean, I don't feel like they got anything that was leading towards it, but of course they don't do that. But we got SummerSlam. 4 weeks. We'll talk about that coming up. We'll see what they come out with Raw. And, we'll have SmackDown to talk about by then, but at least we'll get some direction of what they're going to do with Brock Lesnar and see how they're going to go with that. Where Drew McIntyre lies with his opponent. We'll see about that too. Let me go into a couple of things that we are learning about in the news that we should go and bring up. At the moment, Bayley and Sasha Banks, they're trying to call out Lita and Trish Stratus to go fight them at SummerSlam. So we could see that, right? And at the moment, WrestleVotes did announce about a week ago that there were 2 matches no longer planned because of Edge getting injured and Brock Lesnar not being expected to work SummerSlam this year. So with Lesnar, it's not like he's working the event because WWE doesn't have a desire to book him without fans. But didn't they announce him to come on Monday? Right? So the moment the projected SummerSlam card that Creative have in place has been torn up. So rumored matches we have so much at the moment. First of all, it's AJ Styles and Matt Riddle for the Intercontinental title. But again, they already put that on TV, so will they just do a rematch? Street Profits against Andrade and Angel Garza for the Raw Tag Team titles. Could we see Nakamura and Cesaro take on New Day for the titles in a rematch? I mean, there's not much there. There's not much of real big stars coming back to do shows. So they're working with what they're going to have to work out with. I don't know what they're going to do. Not sure. So anyway, we're going to leave it there. We'll come back. That's coming Wednesday going into Thursday with another Wrestling Israel podcast. And we'll see what they come up with here as some possible SummerSlam implications. Where could they go with matches? I don't know, because there's not much that I feel like is going to make any steps to make SummerSlam be at that level. I don't see it yet. But, hey, they could surprise us. Let's see if they give us some SummerSlam surprises coming up. So anyway, come back for another podcast later this week. Another Wrestling Israel podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Thank you for listening to the Wrestling Israel podcast, brought to you by KingofAmazon.com. For more information on how to subscribe to the show, how to share the Wrestling Israel podcast to listeners like you, and check out the latest wrestling headlines, go to WrestlingIsReal.com. That's WrestlingIsReal.com.